We're turning to a different kind of crisis in West Africa. Because of the size and seriousness of the Ebola outbreak, Voice of America and BBC are collaborating in order to give audiences in Africa and around the world access to the best information and content available. Just the other day, we brought you the story of Annie, who was taken from our home in Liberia with suspected Ebola. In this report, the BBC's Gabriel Gatehouse tries to find out what happened to her.
Annie is stretchered into the ambulance and driven away. Amid the chaos of the outbreak, health facilities have become overloaded and people can be difficult to trace. 2 days later, we go off in search of Annie. We visit one of the main Ebola treatment centres run by the World Health Organization.
We're actually looking for a patient who was brought into an ETU. We think it could have been this one.
There they tell us they can't disclose any information, citing patient confidentiality. But even family members sometimes find it impossible to get news of their relatives once they're admitted to the clinics. In Logan Town, we meet Dayon Musa. This neighbourhood has been hard hit by the outbreak. Some weeks ago, 2 of Mrs. Musa's sons developed Ebola-like symptoms. They were taken to a treatment centre. Then they vanished. I searched everywhere, she says. I checked the lists at all the clinics and they weren't there.
And this is not an isolated case. We've heard other stories, both in this neighbourhood and other parts of Monrovia, of relatives, loved ones disappearing. What's happening is that people are going into these Ebola treatment centres and some of them are simply disappearing without trace.
Our search for Annie continues. We're driving across town to find Laureen Wisser. She's the nurse who stretchered Annie into the ambulance and took her to a treatment centre. She should be able to tell us which one. On the way, we're overtaken by a pickup truck laden with orange body bags. Laureen is at home. She's been attacked while collecting another Ebola patient.
You look like you're limping a bit.
Some fear the treatment centres almost as much as the virus itself. They fear disappearing into the system and never coming out. She's in pain, she says, but her suit was not ripped in the assault, and so she should be safe from the virus. Laureen tells us she delivered Annie to a clinic run by the charity Médecins Sans Frontières.
Roughly what time did you drop her off at the clinic? Because we're trying to find her and we can't. Nobody seems to know where she is.
It was 4 to 5. It was after 4:30 p.m.
Yeah. Did she regain consciousness at all, or was she still unconscious?
No. She was very bad. She was even gasping.
It's probably the best run facility in town. If she is there, she'll be in good hands. But when we call MSF, they tell us no one by that name has been admitted. We drive back to Annie's neighbourhood. It's an area called Red Light, controlled by gangs of former soldiers from Liberia's civil war. Annie earned her living here selling beans, spaghetti and milk. We're looking for her housemate, Patience, whom we met earlier. She's a juice seller here. We make contact with her and she agrees to meet us back outside the home she shares with Annie. And Patience has news.
Yeah, I think she went to the hospital in Poko, and they told her she didn't make it.
The people from the hospital called, she says. She didn't make it. Annie died the day after being admitted. The mattress on which she struggled through the last days of her life has been dragged out into the yard. The rest of her belongings have been dumped behind an outhouse. Patience says she has no plans to move out of the house they shared. Life goes on. Annie is no longer one of the missing. As she joins the growing list of the dead, the outbreak shows no sign of abating.
That was BBC's Gabriel Gatehouse reporting.